So glad to see everybody. We're getting more and more people attending our sessions all the time. So I would just say, let's make sure that everybody gets a chance. Some people take a little longer to formulate their thoughts and get them out. So once in a while, we try to work in pauses so that people have a chance to reflect. And just feel free to raise your hand with the icon or in real time. To get our attention, and Roger will be reading our written comments and making sure that everybody gets seen. So with that, I will turn it over to the amazing Anna, who I'm always blown away by. So Anna, take it away.
No pressure. A slightly smaller group we have today, but I think that's a good thing because I planned something a bit more interactive for today. I'm going to share my screen. I made a presentation so that you always have something to look at, not just my face as I'm speaking. I just share the screen. There's so many options here. Okay. I'm always confused as to which one to choose. Right. Is everyone seeing this?
I can see trees.
Yeah. Oh, okay. How about now?
Roger, would you be able to help her from just seeing the icons, or?
So many things opening. You should be able to see the first slide, alternative communication session too.
Well, we've got a little bit of time if you want. I mean,
Okay.
it's important. So, oh, there we go.
There we go. Perfect.
Okay, so just some words of introduction and also a reflection from me in regards also to our first session, which left me both excited and a bit apprehensive as I began to grasp the full scope of what we are taking on, right? So exploring communication through the lens of neurodivergence, but also doing that in a limited space of online interaction, right? And communication by nature is multi-dimensional, and working within the confines of digital connectivity can and perhaps is constraining, right? So that's something that's been on my mind, and I have to say I was a bit anxious at the idea of how are we going to develop this so that it doesn't feel artificial, so that it is still communication, even though we are not sitting next to one another. But online communication is also the very medium that brings us together, right? And without it, we wouldn't be having this conversation today at all. So then I thought that maybe part of our work here is to reimagine communication's dimensionality within the one-dimensional frame of the digital world. Because I thought that, CASY seeks to develop or to map out a neurodivergent culture that can challenge normative perspectives, right? And I think with that in mind, it's important for us to view our exploration of communication not just as an abstract concept, but through the lens of culture, individuality, collectivity, community, right? Our goal here is not merely to discuss, but to experiment, to locate new methods that reflect both personal and shared experiences. And as I mentioned during our first session, those of you who have not been here will not know this, which is why I'll just repeat it. I want these meetings to be collective efforts. I am not a lead or a driver of this process. just a facilitator for the sake of calling it something. That being said, I constantly ask myself, what can I bring to the table that would be beneficial, right? What is the edge that neurodivergence has given me? And the answer that keeps on coming to mind is culture. I consider myself a creature that has abandoned, rediscovered, and in a way even recreated culture in that order. And through this, I have learned that culture is organic. And because it is organic, it is also chaotic, just as nature is. It is self-regulatory and self-organizational. But that self is composed of a multitude of elements that work in a repetitive dynamic, creating a force over time. It's no different than physics, really. And we need particles to vibrate in order to create enough energy to set things in motion, granting enough force for something to eventually exist without our constant effort, right? And in this space, I think that we are those vibrating particles. And as we explore alternative forms of communication, we're not just building a temporary structure, we're creating something that with enough momentum, and I think this is the point of these meetings, can stand on its own. Our shared goal is to reach a point where the ideas and the tools that we have uncovered can exist beyond these sessions, and sort of take on a life of their own. And I was also thinking about the language of these sessions, right? We talk in English, we communicate in English, which also in a way may seem like a limitation because that is not the native tongue of so many of us, including myself. And then, you know, to those of you who are, you know, native in English, you may listen to me sometimes and my usage of that language or the mistakes that I make can, I don't know, evoke different feelings in you, right? But then I realized that, you know, in order for us to allow ourselves to move beyond literal interpretations of words and instead listen to how we use them and for which purpose, we need to also shift the paradigm of language itself. And if we are to use a common language that facilitates communication, and English seems to be the choice for that language in this century at least, then we must be open to reinterpretation and redefinition. Yeah, so all of these reflections have left me quite content, although they originated from a very anxious place initially. I think that we are in the right place with the right tools and at the right moment. And if it feels like a challenge, I think that simply means that it holds potential for growth and learning. So this is probably really confusing. I just wanted to share some of these reflections with you. After the first session, it dawned on me just how abstract we're gonna have to be to talk about alternative communication, especially over Zoom.
Hey,
But
Anna,
yeah,
got a clarifying comment here. If I can read that out loud. Have someone asking or commenting, I can't even imagine making autistic people come to in-person stuff. Most of my meetings
yeah.
are online. Most of our connections and communications are non-local, and I'm surprised that one might think in-person meetings would facilitate a more desirable outcome.
Okay, yeah, good.
And there's another one here. I went to an event from Autistic Women and Non-Binary Network. I think that's the name of it. And they did a fantastic job with language, English, Spanish, ASL, and more.
There's something about the person-to-person communication when you're around atoms and molecules as opposed to zeros and ones. There's a better connection, and even though as an autistic person it's hard for me to connect with people, I do feel that human connection when I'm around people. So I would encourage some of us, if possible, if we can handle it, to try to interact with other autistic people in person. It's only going to suit you better, for real.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I'm really happy that you've already begun sharing how you feel about that, because I actually want to ask you to fill in a survey for me. That's how I wanted to start this this session today, and I think you're gonna find it quite fun. I try to make it fun. Right, I'm just gonna share the link here with you in the chat. And basically, I want to ask you how you feel about both digital and in-person communication, right? So those of you who want or who can, if I could just ask you to go to that link that I just shared in the chat and fill that in for me. It shouldn't take more than 5 minutes. Right. So that's what it is. And I wanted to play whilst I was, Roger, can we take 5 minutes just to do that?
Sure. And
Yeah.
Anna, is this optional? Because I think we've got some folks who prefer not to fill out surveys, if that's
Yeah, of
okay.
course it's optional. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. And one other comment I wanted to read out says, I think I heard, quote, a right place, unquote, and I like the idea of there being multiple right places, and we're just in one of them. Also part-time augmentative and alternative communication user here, so it is also concrete. I am always down to play with the interface between abstract and the concrete is also here.
Okay, good, because that's what we're gonna do today, at least I hope so.
A few
Okay,
more
so
comments. Virtual mental health treatment is life-changing. I figured out something in the past week which had been bothering me from past years. Me being unaware, sensory overloaded, and then use of noise canceling headphones.
Okay. I'm just gonna show to you the questions that are here so that you know what is it that I'm actually interested in. I just wanted to know what you consider some of the common cultural challenges in online communication, cultural aspects that online communication can overlook, some practices that you think could make it more inclusive, the effect of online communication on modern culture, cultural phenomena that has emerged as a result, some other questions like that, right? Just so for people who hate surveys so much they don't even want to click on the link. And at the end, I wanted to ask you which one of these cats are you today? I think I may be number 5 or number 4. They're pretty similar. But anyways, yeah, whoever wants to, it would just be a nice way to give feedback, especially if you don't feel like speaking up during these sessions. But okay, let's.
You can just read a couple feedback about surveys here. One person is saying survey contains items which are single selection and only one question has the equivalent of an open comment box. So that's why I can't do it. My also autistic challenge with surveys is that the context, interlocutors, and nature of what's communicated determine preferred mode. It varies. Okay, some typos here.
Okay, so if you
Oh,
prefer
and there's
open-ended
one,
questions, you can always answer in the chat.
and we can also, can we post this online for people to later do? I think someone's
Yeah.
asking.
We can post it online like we did
Okay.
with the last one.
Okay, cool.
And let's also include your information so that people like me who who can't do forms like that for various reasons could give you sort of an essay answer.
Okay. So just sort of a question, or you know what, if anyone wants to share what they thought of the session, or I said that during the first one, I should have maybe mentioned it now. If you want to share how the session made you feel, or some suggestions that you have, or anything really that comes up, you're more than welcome to share that over the group that we have, Discord, right, or the email, or in the chat, anything, right? So whichever form is most convenient, really does not matter to me or anyone else, I think. We all pick those forms, right? Those things feel different to each one of us. So however you want to do it, I am very happy for any and all kinds of feedback. Right, and I wanted to, let's see if everyone feels comfortable with that, to communicate with, I wanted to invite you to communicate without words with me today. So I don't know, we can do it if you have a piece of paper, or you can just move, you can make a sound, you can do anything you want. I want you to choose a feeling or a message or an idea that you want to convey without using any spoken or written words, right? So you can take a piece of paper and draw it, or I don't know, anything you want, or it can be a gesture, a sound. It can be an emoji symbol in the chat, a drawing. Just pick a feeling or a message, and yeah, and try to communicate it to us in a way different than using language.
Do you want us to do that now, or are you gonna have a
No, yeah, if you could do it now, yeah.
I don't know if people can see me because I'm just still seeing you.
I can see you.
Okay, I'll tell you how my week went on my face. How about that? Ready? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to just do you want to call it something, or do you want to just leave it the way that it is?
I don't think I would call it anything because it's such a pattern
Yeah,
for me. It would be the same if I was describing any time this pattern occurred,
yeah,
which
okay.
is the essence of communication, right? Is that recursive quality that gives a pattern meaning over time.
Absolutely. Okay, great. Thank you. Would anyone else like to share with us, in whichever way they choose, how they feel or communicate something?
There's some emojis in the chat if you want to take a quick peek.
Okay.
I've kind of had a crummy week. Would you want me to communicate it without like words?
Yeah, just anything that comes to mind.
I mean, I have it laying around. I have an arrest warrant, but oh well. Oh well, I can't find that. I can play some notes about my week though, about my arrest warrant.
Okay, go ahead. I don't know if we can hear. Can you hear? I cannot hear the guitar.
Probably not. Like I gotta like turn on the amplifiers. I don't want to like bother people's hearing. You know, people are hearing sensitive.
But I think your laughter is already telling us a lot about how you feel about your week.
I guess, man. I think it's deceiving, but yeah. But I don't know. Like, speaking about communication and everything, um, I got myself arrested because of like, from autistic communication and not being able to express myself in a way that was acceptable to the police. And I think that's something that a lot of us autistic people might run into in the course of our lives, um, whether you're a minority or a male, really.
Mm.
So, you know, it's just be careful, people.
That is an interesting point about how we appear physically is part of our communication and might communicate things we don't even intend, which was part of my bad week as well. So I feel you.
Well, some of us, like myself, I hate using levels and words like that because I think it's dehumanizing to us. Um, I fall under like what the states. So like I have the state involvement and all that. So like my IQ level's high, but my functioning and processing super low, like lower than some Down syndrome people. So I'm disabled by autism, but um, a person in the general public isn't going to see that. And I don't expect them to. Um, you know, and that's why I would really love to see autistic culture, and that's what caught my eye is can we make our own people, you know, and advocate for ourselves, and maybe advocate for those of us that can't talk.
Yep, that's what we're working on. Absolutely.
Yeah, and this is why I asked you this question, because like you said, Don, there are so many ways in which we communicate on a daily basis that isn't literal and that doesn't involve words. But when we stop and think what those ways are, we often find it difficult to sort of on the spot think of how do we communicate in ways that perhaps we are not aware of, right? How do we come across, how do we come across essentially? And I wanted to just have a discussion with you on that, but maybe we can only do the third question since it was only you two that shared with us that I initially wanted to ask you to just grab a piece of paper and draw because I think that's maybe easier than especially if you don't like to speak up or if you don't like to show your face, then drawing is so much it's just much simpler and maybe more natural. So a lot of people draw to sort of figure out how they feel, but it's okay. Someone, yeah.
There's a few comments in the chat.
Yeah.
One person saying that this is why I'm afraid of cops, which make it worse, of course. I had to make a police report today. My therapist went with me. Had so many people say look/sound that I look or slash normal. Yay, masking. Yeah, at what cost do you have to do that? Oh, he has their hand up.
Yeah.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So I'm in the business setting. I tend to have to. I can't help but be direct, and I ask a lot of questions that are seen as like I'm challenging when I'm not. I just literally want to know, more details. I need details in order for me to perform. But it's really hard sometimes to know what's appropriate and what's not sometimes, even though like I observe a lot, and I've even had to resort to deep diving into etiquette books, business etiquette books, to know how to, you know, uh, act sometimes, or what to say, and I mimic. I have to mimic, um, because just saying what you mean and meaning what you say seems to not go well, which is so weird. It's so odd. It doesn't make any sense to me, and that's what makes it very hard, to just be direct, or ask clarifying questions is seen as challenging. Um, I don't understand that. So it can be very confusing to me.
Would you say that is something that that is a struggle in a situation of neurodivergent or autistic versus normative setting, or is it corporate culture?
Versus, yeah.
I think we're in corporate culture. Notice they really fall hard into hierarchies, and that doesn't. It's not that I don't understand hierarchies. I cannot act that way because it doesn't make sense to me. It's to me, I can't explain it, but I know intellectually what a hierarchy is, but I physically and everything in my being cannot act that way because it just doesn't make sense. It's idiotic to me. And however much I try, I cannot. But I notice that it's definitely a lot of hierarchy, and you have to act a certain way if someone is, somewhat superior, I guess you could say. I can't act that way. I have to communicate. I don't care if you're the CEO, the VP, the whatever. I will act the same way with you that I act with everybody else. And that seems sometimes as like, I don't know. I mean, I've struggled with that all my life. Like even in school, like in high school, I basically was treated like a narc because I'm like, I didn't, act like everybody else. I didn't wear where everybody else wore. I didn't follow any trends because I didn't care for it. So, and at other jobs, they thought that I was like, you know, a, like a suck up or something, because I would speak to other people that were like, practice managers or this or that, like nothing. Like they're just like everybody else. So they thought I was like, buddy buddy with them when that was not the case. I just didn't care of their title. So it's definitely, I think, neuro. I guess I'm just getting used to using that term, neurodivergent. Um, uh, I think it's that it's difficult to just be yourself, and that it can be very exhausting, especially in a corporate setting where you have to act a certain way in order to make people feel comfortable. So I'll say one more thing, and I don't want to monopolize the time. One more thing is that I've noticed that when I don't mask and my face is normal, it's considered RBF face, but it's just me. It's just my face. And immediately when I am normal faced, it makes people immediately uncomfortable. They start thinking, are you pissed at me? Is everything okay? Like all day I'll be asked, are you okay? Are you mad? No, seriously, did I do something wrong? It happens all day that I have to constantly put a smile and all this stuff just to make people comfortable. So being me makes people uncomfortable. My face makes people uncomfortable, so it's exhausting.
I just want to read a few follow-up comments. I'm sorry, Don, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, I was just going to say that hierarchy is a language. Hierarchy is a language. Like what our language rests or weaves within, weaves through, is itself a language. And hierarchy doesn't leave any room for people to communicate. So go ahead, Roger.
All right, great. Now we got a lot of folks sort of relating to that, the masking comment. People saying it's exhausting. Let's see what we get. A lot of people relating to it. Some people, it's like you don't even belong in a setting because of that. Let's see, inauthenticity, and then the traumatizing nature of corporate culture, especially at a call center, which they worked and caused the burnout. People being bullied in the workplace. Some folks suffering from selective mutism, like they can't feel like they can talk to the boss, and um, just toxic environments in general, or people misinterpreting behaviors. So, stimming, like somebody's like taking that to mean like someone's bored, or maybe even being disruptive here. Okay, and I know had her hand up, so I wanted to make sure she got a chance to talk. You there? Let's maybe give her a few more minutes. Well, we'll give her circle back to her. But one more comment is being me makes people uncomfortable. Yes, this. We need to find our people who will make us feel safe and affirmed.
Yeah. Yeah, corporate culture is a topic that keeps on coming up, so perhaps it deserves a separate session. But I personally have never met anyone that felt good in corporate culture. So I think the discussion here is even broader than just neurodivergent people in corporate culture. I think it's just the fact that corporate culture is completely unnatural, and even people that consider themselves neurotypical find that challenging. So yeah,
I just want, oh, sorry, I just wanted to know my volume finally works, so whenever you're ready. Okay, yeah, you go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just wanted you to know that I figured it out. I'm walking and with my phone, so it's complicated.
no, it's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, just all very interesting. I really relate to what the person before said. I just want to reiterate, in my experience, I've avoided a lot of corporate culture. I find the same issues with context and communication problematic in academia, in the arts, everywhere, interpersonally, every possible which way. So I don't think it's only corporate culture. In my experience, I just wanted to say that. Though I totally understand the hierarchy thing and really relate to that. But I have run into countless problems when I've tried to work. I mean, now I just work freelance because I kind of gave up because it's just trying to communicate with people and them getting really upset when I'm asking clarifying questions. You know what I mean? I think everybody, well, I've heard a number of people talk about that. And it's just like, I need to know, to understand what the thing is. And maybe that does seem like a direct, it seems to come off like an aggressive thing. And I'm not being aggressive in my own experience. But it comes off that way. So I just wanted to mention that. And then what I had actually come in originally, raised my hand, was to say it's just interesting framing this whole issue because, so for instance, for you, drawing seems natural for me because I have a whole traumatic experience with an art teacher in art. Drawing actually has a lot of problematics, and I fall into a kind of perfectionism and things like that, right? And so for me, sometimes the easier way to communicate is just speaking like this and in a kind of this way. But for some other people, it's not. For other people, drawing is the best thing. Um, and I guess the reason I'm bringing that up is just how personal this all is, you know. There's so many traumas, at least I've experienced, I imagine everyone else here has, you know, in terms of communication, in terms of certainly, you know, people misinterpreting facial things. And because I've worked so long in theater, I trained myself to, you know, figure out how to put on the appropriate face. And as a matter of fact, when I was first diagnosed autistic a few years ago in my 50s and trying to explain this to people, they're like, but your face is so mobile. I'm just like, if you only had any idea how exhausting. And I didn't even know it myself, you know. So anyway, those are some thoughts. Thanks.
Yeah, and this is why I wanted to ask you, how did you decide to use that particular form of communication, right? Because there is always a story behind that. You said for you, drawing is not the medium because there's too much perfectionism. For someone else, it is because they don't like speaking up. I mean, I think there's plenty we can learn about ourselves from asking that very simple question of why did I choose to use that as an alternative form of communication, and what does that tell me about where and how I feel comfortable, right? So if we're not going to talk about that, I would just like, I don't know, each one of you, if you want to ponder on that, and to see what, you know, what comes up when you're thinking about this question. We have few hands up.
I am not cool with my comment being described as about behaviors. I think the behavioral framing is part of what is going wrong in the misinterpretations.
Yeah.
So here are the words I actually said. People often interpret stimming as anything else. Distress, boredom, whatever. Or when I sit on the floor instead of in a chair, most people assume there's more wrong than just that they're not working for me. Or when I use AAC, people interpret my not using mouth words. People add interpretations like I am being visibly weird at them instead of just where they can see it.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Because so often we interpret what we see, not we hear, or what is being told to us, right? Excellent comments. This pertains to the first question, I think, you know, and also culture to a certain extent, but there are so many cultures that come into play here, other than just what we think of when we, you know, tradition, language, how we grew up, what we consider to be normative and what not, what we're used to, the personal culture, right? The culture of our families. So much of that. Someone else had their hand up.
It was. You still want to say something?
I don't know. This is just communication is like we have to communicate with each other, and trying to define parameters of communication, what's comfortable is quite the task to take on. But like I agree with some of the things that are being said here, because I also work in an office setting, and I often have to take time to process what I want to say in order to say it, but then I often find that by the time I've determined what it is that I'm trying to say, the conversation has already moved on. And then it's like, well, then what's the point to even jump in at this point, because we're already a different part in the conversation, and so that does create conflict in the office. But and yeah, I try. I feel like the best way for me to communicate is verbally, but like you have to give me time to process what I'm trying to say, what I'm feeling, because oftentimes I don't know what I'm feeling. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I definitely relate to some of the things you said. For me, it's the content very often. I just don't feel there is maybe a point or a need to get involved in a conversation. But I also think it's interesting how this discussion sort of drifted towards communication with others, which I think is pretty natural. But how do we, but because we also communicate with ourselves, right? And I think especially as neurodivergents, we communicate with ourselves mostly. And this is perhaps like the only space where we don't have to think about the form, and we can just do it in whichever way feels most comfortable. So I was wondering if anyone would maybe like to share how they communicate with themselves. And it, and when I ask that question, I don't expect to hear what you say to yourself when you get back from work, but do you maybe have some kind of I don't know, a technique, something that you do to...
I have things that I do.
Yeah.
I like to meditate. One thing that I've found is I'll go into extremely cold bodies of water, preferably 40 degrees and under. As long as it's safe. If exposing yourself on purpose is different than being exposed by accident. Being prepared for it is different. What happens is right when you sit in that cold water, your brain everything just stops. You stop perseverating, you stop thinking about anything, and you just breathe and you just survive. And what I do is through the breathing techniques that I've learned and that I do, I've been able to reduce my anxiety and reduce rumination. And this is all things that have been proven scientifically. You can look it up. It's WIMHOF, Wim Hof breathing technique. I can put it into the chat in the bottom. Also, the cold water submersion. I honestly swear by it. I have had a life-changing experience just by sitting in that water and shutting my brain off and not hearing the thoughts and the rumination that I normally have. And there's no expectation of me to communicate to anyone but myself and having whatever intent I have through my meditation. Whether it's I want to feel better, or maybe I'm feeling sad, so I need to go inside to find out why I'm feeling a certain way, why I'm fearful, why I'm sad, why am I this. I can do that, but only by shutting off my brain, So, like I said, I'll put that in the bottom. You can look it up. And there's science backed behind this man's techniques, and plenty of universities have studied him. And the fact that he's able to do these breathing techniques, he can turn his blood alkaline, which is a very positive thing. It prevents cancer. So I'll leave you with that.
Thanks.
Right.
On the heels of that, I would add that nature generally is where I have to go to communicate with myself. Unless I get a really good connection with someone, I feel like I can't always differentiate myself from everyone else around me. I'm feeling their feelings. It's really overwhelming. And so going into nature, I can actually tell what kinds of reflections I'm generating myself, as opposed to having that being part of a web, which is a beautiful thing. But if it's a chaotic web or a noisy web, that can start to be problematic. But that's how I think, with my inner dialogue.
There's a couple of comments that I think are relevant here. One person saying, a lot of inner dialogue, racing thoughts, negativity, it's so difficult. And someone else saying, I write to communicate with myself, to figure out what I'm thinking and feeling, and walk myself through how to proceed. Also singing. Okay, so also sing. I noticed the type of music I'm gravitating towards. And then there's someone who's asking which self, and they agree that as a cold plunge owner, sorry, these icons are supposed to be convenient, but they're always in the way, so you can't, it's hard to read stuff. See here, that's right. Yeah, it helps with joint pain too, the cold plunge. Yes. Yes, someone really liking the suggestion of nature. Let's see. Effective empathy makes knowing what I feel super tricky. Inner dialogue has been very negative. Someone else wrote, I used to have near constant suicidal thoughts. Meditation and medicine has rewired my brain.
Yeah, I love the which self comment. That's great. Yeah, it's so it's wonderful how different that communication is in comparison to the way we communicate with the outside world, how much gentler and kinder it is, right? And I think that is a very powerful commentary also on the state of the world in which we live in, right? Because it cannot be the case that we are just so odd that we can't find the right way to be with the people. So yeah, thank you for all of this. For me, it's usually, when I was younger, I used to say that when I get really confused, I do a headstand, and I stay like that for a minute, and then it just sort of, I go back to the center. Or now recently, it's been closing myself in a dark room. I roll down the shutters and it's really quiet, and I just stay like that for 15 minutes, and it's a complete reset. So that has always been easier, and I think for a lot of neurodivergence, it has always been easier to communicate with the self. It's just the natural way to be, and the first serious relationship which one of us had. Can't tell if that's the same for the rest of the people. But I think it is something that all of us share. We have a couple of
There's a couple of new comments. One saying meditation has saved my life, along with yoga.
Did we lose Anna?
I see her screen here, but no picture.
Well, while she makes her way back, hopefully, I just wanted to reflect that it seems so clear that we need to explore this link between trauma and communication, because it seems like there's a lot to unpack there. I mean, of course, we know that. How do you express yourself effectively if you don't feel like you are even free to move or speak or be yourself?
We've been gaslit our whole lives, every single one of us. Like me, I can't take the sound of crunching noises. It drives me up the wall. It's like punching me in the brain. And for my whole life, people told me, "Oh no, 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 no! It's just you. You're having a temper tantrum, or you're being a jerk, or you can't tolerate other people." No, I have a disability. You're hurting me. And I'm sure some of us have different quirks.
Can you guys hear me? Sorry if I'm interrupting. So just wanted to say real quick, because I know it's ending, but I'm just coming to terms with a lot of this stuff, and the difference with me, I guess, and not just in corporate, but just anywhere, is that I've noticed a lot of people have like a higher sense of justice. I keep hearing that, and I can definitely relate to it. And what stresses me out is like everywhere I walk, everywhere I go, I see things that shouldn't be, that just don't make sense because they don't. They're wrong. They're against nature. They're against everything of how it should be in the natural world. I see pesticides going on lawns. It's just nothing of that. It's like a punch in the gut to me. So in terms of how I communicate with myself is first I'm in the car and I just talk and I scream and I cry and I have a whole dialogue about it. And then, but there's so much sensory overload that you kind of have to stop all of the dialogue, all of the noise in order for you to be able to process. And for me is to put high rain sounds, to be able to think clearly because there's so a million thoughts going on. You see so many patterns, you see so many things that other people can't. But um, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think there's anything wrong with seeing things, how, especially in this country, there's a lot of things that just shouldn't be. And because we're sensitive to it, um, I don't think that we should be vilified for it, it doesn't make um, it doesn't make any sense that you know I don't know how to explain it. Like just even work. I work in finance. That's like working with the devil, almost. It's seeing things in finance how it works, and if you really study finance, it's horrible. you know. And these are things that shouldn't be. So what rubs also people the wrong way is that since we have a higher sense of justice, and in my case, I can't stay shut. I will call it out. I will not let it lie. And that rubs people the wrong way to speak up. And I will always speak up, you know? So that's another thing that some people have to deal with because other people will not see or will stay shut because they will adhere to that hierarchy and not go against the grain. And I think we go against the grain. We don't fall in line. Anyway, that's it. I have a million thoughts and I'm not making sense anymore. Sorry.
No, everything you said resonates with everyone here. I know that from past meetings and knowing people in the group. My own opinion is that we are here to answer that hierarchy on a very literal level. I don't think autism is what people have said it is. I think we're redefining it by reclaiming our culture. And I think being the people that speak up with great motivation toward the common good is what we are about.
Yeah, we have a lot of folks who also are seconding that experience, a strong sense of justice and especially being difficult this day and age.
So I got a call from Anna, a phone call. She said her power went completely out. She's not going to be able to make it back. But I would just say that clearly we need to have more of these. I'm going to try to talk her into maybe having them every couple of weeks. I think there's so much to talk about here and to communicate here in other ways, for sure.
A few more comments. We see the truth and people want to pretend everything is okay. That's one. Also, another form of gaslighting is saying what I hear all the time, no one else has that reaction to ... unquote. And that could be medicine, sound, light, smells, injustice, etc.
I think there's some danger in the justice thing though, because we're not always right, even though we may think we are as a human being, and sometimes we have to allow room for some things we do. you may think that you're seeing everything as you are, but everyone has their own perception of what is right and wrong. So seeking judgment all the time, or seeking, what are we talking? What was it? Having a strong sense of justice. Um, it might not always work in your favor, because of other people's perceptions. Be aware of that. Allow people to have their space. Whether they're neurotypical or not.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think that the way that autistic culture seems to be structured as we've been going along is very non-hierarchical. And we've been saying neuroholographic, where everyone's connected. And so if people tell the truth as they see it and have the humility to listen to all points of view, we become more than the sum of the parts. And I agree with you that judgment has no place in that, and it doesn't have to have a place in it.
All right, just a few more comments here. Reading, engaging with your special interests and being in a flow state can be a form of communication with yourself. It's literally listed as diagnostic criteria, quote, hyper-focus, unquote, as though it's a pathology instead of the way we express ourselves and experience joy. Right, and yes, a lot of the injustice and sensitivity I have is driven by personal trauma. And someone bringing up that the world is not designed for neurodivergent folks, and our programming, upbringing, etc., is also different. That's what we have for the chat so far.
Cool. I don't know if you can see it. This is a picture of how I felt this week. Lots of squiggles, lots of tangles, difficult to get through, feeling trapped inside myself as I try to tease that apart. But luckily,
I had the
Cool
autistic
hair.
community to help me this time.
I said, luckily you have cool hair.
oh, thank you. Oh, you're psychic. Did you hear that, Roger?
I know. I was just thinking, like, we've had lots of hair comments,
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I needed to hear
If I
that.
take my hat off, I'll look like the crypt keeper.
Well, I want to give everybody a chance. Is there anyone that didn't get a chance to share with the group? Want to give you ample time to do that. So okay, well, and always people can communicate on the Facebook page. We have our website up to make connections. There's lots of ways to continue this discussion. And I so appreciate everyone. I always learn so much when I'm immersed with you all. So thank you, and we'll just see each other at the next one. Let's make a pact.
Yeah, Dawn, I just wanted to thank you and Roger and Anna in her absence and everyone. It's so meaningful to communicate with everybody here, and I just wanted to say that. That's all.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
We
Very,
have
very.
overwhelming votes that more of these sessions should take place.
Yes,
Thanks, everyone.
absolutely. Good. Well, thanks everyone for communicating today. It's always valuable. We care about you here. Okay? So we'll see you next time.